Hello everyone, this is Damon with Pixnub. In this video, I'm going to be demonstrating the new Foggy Night PSD template that I just released and going over the adjustments that you can make in the layers. Now it's pretty simple to adjust things, but there are some things you may not think about that you can adjust in the layers, so I'll be showing you all of those in this video. Now of course the first thing you'll want to do is put your image into the template. Now you can do this with the Sports Photo Automation plugin as well, but I'm just going to be demonstrating this manually here. And with all of my templates, I color code the player layer green to make it easy to find. And then of course you'll just move and scale your layer into place where you want the layer. So with this design, all of the text is editable, and that includes the fence sign. So if you're shooting baseball, you might want something around 400 for the fence sign. You can make it whatever you want, but for softball, you might want something a little bit lower, like 220 or so. So it's pretty easy to find. Under the background, all of these, the layers are organized into groups, and so I try to name the layers to make sense, because I actually hate it when there's a design and the layer names make no sense, like layer 7 copy, for example. So with mine, I name all the layers with something to make them understandable. And under the fence, you'll find the sign, and then there's the sign text. So we can just put something else in, like 220, for example. And so for the player name here, that will be under the overlays, and you'll see a group called text. And you can just change the name to whatever you want. And then I separated the number sign from the number, just to make it easier to use with the Sports Photo Automation plugin. So if you have a list of numbers in the CSV, you wouldn't have to add the number sign. That's why I put those into two separate layers. Of course, you could size and move the text wherever you wanted to as well. Now for the scoreboard, the color of the LED lights is editable, but the color is in several different layers. So to make it easy, there is a single layer above that's a smart object, and this is linked to all of the other smart objects for the color here. So if you want to change that color, you can just double click on the color. That'll take you into the smart object, and then you can make the color whatever you want. And it's best to start by just adjusting the hue and leaving the saturation and brightness both at 100%. Then you'll save your smart object. So I'm just hitting Control S, or you can do the File Save in your menu. And then when you close that smart object, you see that the scoreboard has changed, but also the fog illumination has changed colors as well. So I'll show you those layers in a moment here, but you can change this to whatever you want. The only disadvantage to changing it in a smart object is you can't see the changes live in the template. So for example, if you change something and you think that that color may be a little bit too saturated, for example, you could come in here and back it off just a little bit. Maybe put the saturation at 80 or so. Anyway, just so you can see that, that's fairly easy to adjust. I'm going to put it back to the template default here. Okay, that's about it for the basics of how to adjust things. Now I'm going to show you some more advanced things in the layers that you can do if you want, as far as customize the template to be a little bit different than it comes out of the box. So I'm just going to turn all of the layer groups off and just go over these one at a time here. So in the very bottom of the template, there's just a solid color for the base layer. And then above that you have a sky. Now you can replace your own sky if you want. If you want some different clouds in there, I mean, feel free just to put your own image in there. Then it's got, since the sky was a little bright for the image, I've got a darkening curves in there, which you could change if you wanted to. And then the color, just to make it a solid color for your template. And again, you can change those if you see fit. The sign poles. I've got the poles layer in there, but then also the shadow on the poles. So this is where the scoreboard is going to put a shadow onto the poles behind it. And then since these are a little bright for the template, a darkening layer. And by the way, all of these graphics in here are photographed graphics, so they're going to look real because they are real. I photographed all of the graphics for this template myself. And then with the scoreboard, there is a darkening layer. Since I shot this scoreboard in the daytime, it may be a little bit bright, so you can change the brightness as you see fit, again with the curves here, or you could delete that and put a brightness contrast layer if curves are confusing for you. That would work too. And with the LEDs here, this is where the color adjustment comes in for the LEDs. And I've also got a layer mask here. If you disable this, you'll see that the third ball and the second out illuminates. I couldn't decide whether I wanted those illuminated or not, so I put a mask in there so you could choose. And the next layer is your glow. This is going to add a glow around your numbers, just a larger radius glow. So if you want to adjust that, you can adjust the opacity of this entire layer group for more or less glow. I think 55 was the default. And then within this group, there's actually two color layers, and these are both attached to this main layer. So when you adjust this main layer, you're adjusting all of the colors so they all adjust together. But within there, I've got two because I did one screen and one soft light adjustment. I found it works well to use both of those together. The screen gives it a slight brightening, and the soft light more just the overall color. I won't get into too much of why I chose these with the numbers I did exactly, but you can play around with the opacities of these layers too if you wish. Next you have the fog called back fog, which is the fog that's behind the fence. And by the way, for this fog as well as the front fog, which is in the overlays here, both of these fogs came from this brush set that I have on Pixnub for $30. And these brushes provide about the most realistic fog you're going to get anywhere, that you can find brushes anywhere. These brushes are created from real images shot with an Nikon D850 in super high resolution. And one of the big pet peeves I have is when I see a graphics design and it's got the fog that just looks like a Photoshop brush applied to a template, and it just looks so fake. So I actually created these brushes based on photographs because they give so much more of a realistic appearance that way. In any case, back to the design here. With this back fog layer, you've also got the LED. Let me turn off the sky here because we're actually seeing some of those clouds on the sky pop through, just so we can see just this fog layer by itself. Now you've got this LED color layer that again is linked to this top layer. but it's only being applied to the top part of this fog, and that's because there's a layer mask here. Now you can adjust the opacity of how much, color intensity, how much these LEDs are making this fog glow. I think the default was 60 if I recall. But you can also have it affect a different area if you want. So I just used a gradient when I did this. You can paint where you want this to affect, or you can use a gradient. Make sure you have got black and white selected for your colors if you want to apply a gradient. You can come into the layer mask and just apply your gradient into a different spot so you can have this light affecting more or less of the fog. Or you could fill this whole mask with black if you want. And then you could come in with a brush. Yeah, of course you don't really have to do any of this, but I'm just showing you here that if you want to really fine-tune how this template is being affected in the different layers, you can certainly come in and do that. Then the next thing is the fence. Now with the fence, now if you have the older center field template, this is the same fence from that template. However, I went in and added more options and separated the layers better so you can reuse these graphics as you wish in other templates as well. So for example, let's turn off everything in this fence here. So the top of the fence now is on its own layer. So you could take this graphic and use it elsewhere if you wanted. Chain link is on a separate layer. And then there is a brightness contrast adjustment for the chain link. There's a top shadow. Oh, I clicked the sign shadow one. There's a top shadow, and this is the shadow that the top of this fence guard is casting on the fence. And you've got your distance sign here, a shadow, which is probably hard to see unless I zoom in, but with this, trying to make a photorealistic graphics, I mean, I look for the details like the shadow that just you may not pick up on if you're just glancing at the template without this shadow, but adding it, your eyes just perceive it as so much more natural when the little subtleties are included. Then you've got your text, and I even went as far as adding scratches on the text that actually line up with the scratches on the side. Again, just little subtle details that really sell this as being more photorealistic because everything is generated from photos or shadows on everything, and it just gives it much more of a natural appearance when it's all said and done. Anyway, that about covers everything for this template and how you can make adjustments for it. So anyway, thanks for watching, and if you're interested at all in this design, there is a link in the description of the video to this template design.